Hello all, welcome to the lecture. In today's lecture, we are going to talk about international law on refugee treaties and organizations. Now, firstly, to understand this topic, that what are the international laws that are there on the refugees, we need to understand that what is a refugee first. When we talk about refugees and the other term that we use migrant, there is a difference between the two. What is the difference? Who is a refugee first of all? Refugees are people who are forced to leave or flee their own countries because of a threat, right? Threat can be towards their life, towards their freedom. That is what a refugee is, what we consider to be a refugee. When I talk about a migrant, what is a migrant then? Migrants are those individuals who are leaving their country, that is voluntarily. Voluntarily, and for the purpose, there can be various purpose, that is education, employment, right? And the reason over here is not that persecution. Suppose if somebody is going to, for education outside, that person will be considered to be a migrant, not a refugee. So migrant continues to enjoy the protection of his or own government even when the person is abroad. So that is the basic difference over here between a refugee and a migrant. There are various conventions and agreements that have been signed for the protection of refugees, and there is one convention, that is the UN Refugee Convention. What is this convention all about? Let us understand that. UN Refugee Convention is an important document that defines refugees and the related matters. India has not signed the convention nor its 1967 protocol. India has not signed it. First, let us understand what is this UN Refugee Convention. So this convention, when I am talking about, this convention clearly talks about that who is going to be considered as a refugee. And that refugee, if it is there, what kind of assistance will be provided to that refugee? Like the assistance, legal protection and protection of rights is considered over here. Another very major important thing about the UN Refugee Convention is that the convention also specifies certain categories of people. The one who are the war criminals, right? This category, and who do not qualify for refugee status. So according to the convention, it gives out a definition of the refugee. A simple definition that a person who is outside his or her country of nationality or habitual residence, or there is some kind of fear of being persecuted because of race, religion, nationality, membership, or maybe due to a particular political opinion that person is carrying. In that case, when there is a fear of persecution, that is the person, the individual who will be called as a refugee. So people who are going to satisfy all these criterias are eligible to receive the rights plus protection that is accorded under the convention. One more thing over here is that the status of refugee status, it is not permanent. And if it is not permanent, that means it will cease to exist if the person, he move back to his own country because of there is improvement in the situation, the fear, the threat is no more there, right? So we cannot say that this status of refugee is something that is permanent. So refugee status is also not given to people who are guilty of war crimes or somebody who has done crime against the humanity. There is a proper criteria. We cannot simply tell somebody that there was a fear of persecution and that person is called refugee. There are certain criteria. So people guilty of acts which are contrary to the purposes and the principles of United Nations, are also not accorded refugee status. Now, under this convention, if you will see, all contracting states, what is it says that they have to appoint a central authority. And what will be the role of this central authority? To assess application for the refugee status and ensure that their life and their rights are protected. So this UN's High Commissioner of Refugees, UNHCR, what is the role and significance? It helps the countries so that they can establish complete procedure. So can we say that the UNHCR serves as the guardian? Yes, that would be the right term over here. Guardian of the 1951 Convention plus the 1967 Protocol. So this convention, the UN Convention of Refugees, is one of the important international convention that pertains to refugees protection worldwide. 1951, that was the year of adoption, and it entered into force in 1954. There has been one amendment to the convention in the form of the 1967 Protocol. Now, how all this started when we are talking about refugees? Now, we require certain guidelines, we require certain laws pertaining to the protection of people who have been actually displaced from their homes and they have become refugees. And if we look at the event of First World War, the biggest event that has occurred. So the problem of displaced persons and refugees, it actually, after First World War, it was there. But after the Second World War, the thing amplified. And a diplomatic conference in Geneva adopted the convention relating to the status of the refugees. So this is all about the evolution, that how we started recognizing the refugee problem. Now, one more thing over here is what the 1967 protocol did. Firstly, if I talk about 1951 convention, it was originally limited in nature, limited in scope to persons fleeing events that were occurring before 1st January 1951, and that too within Europe. 1967 protocol, what does this protocol did? 1967 protocol, it removed the geographical and temporal boundaries of the convention, and that is why it gave it a universal character. That is something that is universally applicable. That is why the convention is also known as Geneva Convention of 1951. Another important thing is, the question is it legally binding? Yes, it is a legally binding document. India has not signed the 1951 Refugee Convention nor its 1967 protocol, and India remains one of the few liberal democracies that has not ratified the international convention. But why? If we look at the case of India, refugees in India precisely, there are Tibetans, there are Sri Lankan Tamils, there are Muslim Rohingyas, and that is a recent issue that we can say. And there have been lot of other population or small population residing in India of sub-Saharan African countries, Somalia and Sudan. And India hosts a large number of refugees in its territory. And it is, in fact, indeed, it houses the largest refugee population in South Asia. Now, if you look at the India situation over here, in the recent past, many people from neighboring countries, they illegally immigrate to India. And for India, it can be a serious concern in terms of, if I talk about territorial integrity and sovereignty of the country. Many a times we have also seen that laws can be misused also. There can be misuse of the laws also. It is not necessarily if the law is there, it cannot be misused. There can be entry of anti-national terrorists into the country. And with that, if we look at the case of India, India is going to become one of the largest populous country of the world. And can we say that it is going to overburden the country more? Not only in from the environment and resources perspective if we look at it, but financial burden. Yes, the financial burdens are going to rise. So that is why the case that has been presented by India, that is the reason it has not signed it. So why there is a need for a law on refugees? Now, if we look at refugees, it's definitely a serious problem. We require a long-term practical solution. And we very well know that refugees, there can be, India has frequently experienced a large influx of refugees. So we require a practical solution for it. Other thing that if we talk about human rights and if we have to adhere to the human rights, a national refugee law will actually streamline the refugee status determination procedure for all kind of refugees and what it is going to guarantee them rights, all the rights that they have under the international law. With that, another major thing is that is going to address the security concerns. Whatever the security concerns are there, it will sufficiently address them. And another very important aspect is that it is going to see that there is no unlawful detention. That is something very, very important because we are talking about human rights and we have to respect and protect the right of every human. If I talk about the protocol relating to the status of refugees of 1967, under the 1950 convention, mainly Europeans that are involved in events occurring before 1st January 1951, they could apply for the refugee status. And that is why it was considered that we require a revision and 1967 protocol removed it. India, though is not a signatory to 1951 UN Refugee Convention or its 1967 protocol, but still significantly India does a lot of things for the refugees. 2016 New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants. 193 members of the United Nations adopted the New York Declaration on Refugees and Migrants in 2016. Another very important thing about is the New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants that it is not binding in nature. Comprehensive Refugee Response Framework. What is this framework all about? This framework came up with the objective of easing the pressure on host countries and communities. It aimed for expanding third country solutions and support conditions in country of origin so that there is complete, return in safety and dignity. There is Global Compact on Refugee. The first draft of GCR, that is Global Compact on Refugee, was released in January 2018 and is based on the CRRF, and with that it sets out practical measures which should be taken by different stakeholders, not one but various stakeholders, so that we can enhance international cooperation in response to refugee crisis. What has been there is another thing that Global Compact for Safe, Orderly and Regular Migration. What was the aim here? Aim was to enhance coordination on international migration and present a framework for comprehensive international cooperation on the migrants and the human mobility. If I talk about the problem of refugee in context of India, we need to understand that there are various population of concern for India, where around 2 lakh people are refugees and 1,000 are asylum seekers. We are talking about a report that was released by UNHCR in 2015. You will see that over the years, India has given shelter to Tibetan, Chakmas, and Najongs from Bangladesh, ethnic Tamil refugees from Sri Lanka. There have been people coming from Pakistan, from Afghanistan. And if I look at the way India has responded towards their rights, and that is something very much commendable also. There have been a lot of issues lately. If I talk about where individuals and related to family identity cards, a lot of issues are there. But we should not forget that yes, India has done a lot for the refugees. Tibetan refugees, if I talk about, Tibetans seeked asylum in India after Dalai Lama fled Tibet in 1959 after a failed uprising against the Chinese occupation. They do not have citizenship rights, and they are granted resident permits by the local authorities. Another very important thing, or you can say a topic in news, is the topic of Rohingya Muslims. Rohingya Muslims, who are they? They are the ethnic people who reside in the Buddhist majority Rakhine province of Myanmar. There was a report that was released by Human Rights Watch report of 2017. It said that a ethnic cleansing campaign which has been working since June 2012 is something very serious and widespread form of violence that has been committed against the Rohingyas. According to UNHCR, India, if in the context of India, India has approximately 1,600 registered Rohingyas, refugees, and however, there are large number of illegal Rohingya refugees also. So you will see that there is no clear definition of refugees as per now, and India does not have a legal framework and national refugee status determination as of now. Another very important thing is, if I talk about the Foreigners Act of 1946, asylum seekers and refugees are covered under the Foreigners Act of 1946. And what does this Foreigners Act do? The Foreigners Act makes the undocumented physical presence of a foreigner in India as a crime, that it would be a crime. So what power it gives to the government, that if there is somebody of this sort, this person can be detained because he is living in the country illegally, right? And that person needs to be deported. There was a bill also that was passed in the year 2015. Congress MP Shashi Tharoor introduced one of the bills that was a private member bill, asylum bill in 2015. The objectives were very clear, that we have to define the term refugee, what is the eligibility for asylum and right of refugees and the asylum seekers. And also it talked about to set a time-bound legal frame for naturalization. So we have seen that United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, that is UNHCR, is the leading international organization that is working in the field of refugees nowadays. So it started to work from 1950 in response to the displacement in Europe as a result of the Second World War. With that, we have several other organizations working in the same way. United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestine Refugees in the Near East, UNRWA. This was established in the year 1949, and UNRWA is the UN agency that is concerned particularly with the Palestinian refugees in Gaza, Jordan, Lebanon, Syria, and West Bank. So what is the focus over here? On the human development of Palestinian refugees, their empowerment, and providing them with the humanitarian services. Another major organization is IOM. What is IOM? It stands for International Organization for Migration. This is also a UN migration agency, and the focus over here, what is the focus? The focus is on regulating global migration. So it is serving the major goal. IOM defines serving refugees within its strategic focus plan. So various projects are also run by it, so that we can help the people, the refugees. And there is UNICEF, United Nations Children Fund, which is also an UN agency. serving mothers and children in the developing countries. And children, if I talk about, they constitute one of the most vulnerable groups during the time of conflict. In 2015, if we go by the data of the year 2015, the number of child refugee was estimated to be around 10 million, a very, very big number. For this reason, UNICEF extended its services to refugees that include that we have to provide education. Yes, we have to provide education to the children, education opportunities for child refugees and also for the mothers, enhancing maternity service for pregnant women who are there in the camps. Save the Children, it is also another organization founded way back in 1919 to combat hunger in Europe during the First World War. World Food Program, established in 1961. The World Food Program is also the UN agency that provides food support. So you will see that it is constantly partnering with the UNHCR to provide food for refugees and the displaced people. It also provides water and sanitation services in its refugee camps. Oxfam is another international organization, a major organization indeed, that sets poverty reduction, that we have to reduce poverty as its major goal. So there are a lot of emergency intervention programs, and if you go by the data, if you go by the facts, around 240,000 people have been served till date, and they have also responded towards the Rohingya refugee crisis that emerged in Bangladesh. So these are some of the major organizations, major agencies that are working for the refugees and how we can take them out of the trap that they are in. Coming to the conclusion of our lecture, what we have discussed today is we talked about who is a refugee first of all. It's very, very important to understand who is a refugee, and we differentiated a refugee with a migrant. After that, we came over to discuss about the convention, the UN's Convention on Refugee, the various provisions, objectives related to it. We have also discussed some important agencies and organizations that are working at the global level to help out in the problem of refugees. The refugee problem is not just a problem of one country, but globally when we are living together, we are sharing our borders together, and every country here and there, it's getting affected by the refugee problems. We have also discussed about the various issues in the contemporary times that have cropped up, and in the context of India, what are the major steps that have been taken in India in context of refugees and what does it stand in the contemporary time. Thank you. With this, we end the lecture here.